everybody. I'm Anthony Brogdon, and you at Strong Inspirations. Strong Inspirations. Let me tell you, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And then we inspire you. We meaning I with some questions with the people I find to come on the channel, and then the people who come on the channel, they tell a story. I let them do the talking. So this is how we gonna keep this history alive. You know, because there's a ton of stories and people know them. And we're gonna have them on this channel so you can hear them and you can know them and you can look at them and you can share them with your friends, share them with them people that don't like you. For whatever reason, if it's nothing but the color of your skin, maybe we can change some attitudes. Maybe we can change some attitudes, enlighten some people. That's what we do here at Strong. I got a good looking lady coming on my channel. I called her, she said, I ain't ready, give me a minute. It didn't take her but a half a minute to be ready. Whoa, my God, oh my God, I'm so excited because she gonna share something that you don't know. Watch. Black history is all over this country. It ain't just in the South and in the West. It's over there in the mountains, up in the Colorados too. And you're gonna hear some Colorado stories. Watch out, here we go. And so what I'd like for you to do, my friends, and it's free, is subscribe to the channel. Just hit the button. It don't cost no money. You don't give no information. All you do is say, I subscribe, and I appreciate it. I want you to like this video. If you haven't liked none of them that you watch, like this video. She ready, she got books behind her. She done read them all. She gonna share them with you real quickly. I want you to hit the notifications bell because I'm putting 4 or 5 videos up a week, as you know. I know it because I can feel it. I had a guy call me. I interviewed him. He's got a museum in Natchez, Mississippi. Look for that video. The guy called me, said, man, I had a tour group come through because they saw me on your channel. It's catching fire. And then what I want you to do, my friends, is tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. Just share it with them. Send them a note, send them a letter, send them an email. Share the link to the channel with them people. They need to hear this good stuff, like what the lady gonna tell you today. And then, you know what I gotta ask you to do, my friends. This is how I make my living. I got a movie out. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. I know you didn't know this because I didn't know it. Some of you did know it, but that slaves, many of them, not, you know, some percentage, could own a business. So they had a skill set, used the business, had to get the man his little cut, you know, he always got something going, and then use the money to buy their freedom. I talk about that in this movie. That's just one of the things. And I want you to watch it. It's streaming on Amazon. It's 75 minutes long. You're not going to go to sleep. You're not going to sleep on that one. And then I want you to read my book. And I ain't gonna lie to you. Don't tell nobody I told you this, my friends, but I'm not no big reader. You know, I ain't big books out there. And the lady, she probably a big reader. She got big books behind her. I ain't gonna no big book reader. So I wrote it for people like me and people like you who feel that way, because I get straight to the point. I give you over 200 facts, and I let the fact stand on its own. I don't give you no commentary like this is what I think and all that. Then I link the fact to where I found it, because it's gonna blow your mind. And after every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school, because them kids need to know it. And if the teachers don't know this information, they can't teach it. And they don't want us to know this kind of stuff. I'm telling you, slaves who own business, slaves who went to college, all these black banks and newspapers, I list them all in my book. And it's very reasonably priced. I invite you to order a copy. You order one, I'll autograph it. And lastly, before I have her come on, check it out. If you read my book and you know everything in here, I give your money back. You that smart, I give your money back. Just call me and say, hey man, I knew all that. All right, I send your money back. I got no problem with it. All right, so order my book. go to my website. It's businessintheblack.net. Business in the Black. Go ahead and order your copy today and hit the subscribe button. I'm excited this lady came. I found her somehow, and I'm excited she come on the channel and she's interested to spend her time to share this knowledge. I'm so excited. We're going to do it right now. Here we go. Sister, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's get it on. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm Terry Gentry. I am a volunteer docent at the Black American West Museum and Heritage Center in Denver, Colorado, and I'm also on the board of directors. And part of my mission is to celebrate my ancestors, and I have quite a few here in Denver, and African Americans throughout the Western United States. We have an incredible story about folks that came out to the West, especially before slavery ended. We had a few folks like Clara Brown, Barney Ford,
yep,
and many others that arrived in the 1850s.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you. I don't mean no disrespect, but I got to ask a couple questions about who you are. What did you grow up in Denver?
Yes, I was born and raised here in Denver. My great-great-grandparents on my mother's side arrived in 1903. They worked for a white family. That's what brought them here. So
how did they get there? How did they get all the way from the South to Denver?
Granddad and Grandpa Frank got in a car with the family that they worked for and drove from Nashville, Tennessee to Denver. And on my dad's side, my great-grandfather, Dr. Thomas Ernest McLean, graduated from Meharry Medical School in Nashville, and his best friend, Joseph H.P. Westbrook, came out here a few months before he did in 1906. And then my great-grandfather started his dental practice February 1907, went back to Nashville and married my great-grandmother and brought her back. They got married May 26, 1907. So my great-grandfather, Dr. Thomas Ernest McLean, is the first Black licensed dentist in Colorado.
Is that incredible story? And so he went to Meharry. So he's smart dude. he followed through on his dream.
Yeah, he was also a professor at Roger Williams University and taught mathematics. And he's done quite a range of different things. He worked in different services as a butler and other things while he was going to school.
Okay.
And his parents, Samuel and Melinda McLean, lived in Nashville, and I still need to find out what their experience was through slavery. I know with my great-great-grandmother, Grand Ann, her mother, Harriet Bailey, was born enslaved on the Bailey Plantation in Lauderdale County, Alabama in 1840.
Okay.
And when she left slavery, she moved to Nashville. And Grand Ann is her oldest daughter. And then she had several other children. And the youngest of her children, Cornelia Stone Bailey White, was born in 1879 and lived to 1981. So I was 24 when she passed away, but she lived with Grand Ann's granddaughter, Grandma Mack, and Granddad Mack the last few years of her life. Aunt Neil was really cool. She was a school teacher.
Okay.
And she got the first time when she was 40. And her husband unfortunately passed away when she was 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then she lived with B. Stamps for a while, for several years, who was a podiatrist here in Denver. And B. Stamps carried a gun, and she was a rough, tough something, just a really cool lady. And then when Miss Stamps passed...
Hold on, let me start. Why she carry a gun?
Because we lived in the Wild West. And she wasn't in that. With some of the stuff that happened back in the day, she just... And a lot of the ancestors that I'm aware of, they packed their guns and they made sure they were safe.
Oh, okay, no, hold on. How about this? Is it because of slavery they worried about being, or just the segregation, the KKK, or what was that?
Well, there's a whole lot of stuff. I don't want to focus or highlight the fact She was
Yeah.
packing a gun. I'm just talking about her. There's a whole lot of other stuff that happened. A lot of folks that did not pack guns, they packed a load of intelligence and a load of commitment to their community
Yeah.
here in Denver. Now, I mentioned my great grandfather's best friend, Dr. Westbrook.
Yeah.
He infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan here in Denver in the 1920s.
Really?
From Hernando, Mississippi, and went to Meharry. And Dr. Westbrook and his wife Mildred were the godparents of my grandmother and great aunt, who were identical twins.
Okay.
So he was an incredible physician and very compassionate physician. And part of the group that protected Dr. Westbrook included my great grandfather, who was also a Mason, Dr. Clarence Holmes, who was one of the charter members of Omega Psi Phi fraternity here in Denver and also national president.
Okay.
Roming. There were a family of Spratland, several men from the Spratland family that were physicians. We had attorneys that were part of the group. They were part of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity.
Yeah.
Sigma Pi Phi here in Denver. I have a picture from 1921 of the men that were members, and all of these men wrapped protection around Dr. Westbrook so no one would find out he infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan here. Because he was living a double life, trying to make sure our community was safe and making sure that he took care of his patients while he gathered information to help our community.
Right.
In Colorado, we had a membership that exceeded 50,000 Ku Klux membership in the 1920s.
Really? Oh my God.
And just recently, our state museum, History Colorado, released ledger books of more than 30,000 names of membership in the Ku Klux Klan. So I'll give you that as a homework assignment to look at History Colorado.
Yes.
And look at their website, and you'll see these ledgers have been posted.
Yes. He infiltrated the KKK. What does that mean? He wore the hood and went to the meeting, or did he look white and they couldn't tell? How did he do that? Just, whatever.
All of the above. So Dr. Westbrook was very, very fair-skinned. His grandmother was enslaved in Hernando, Mississippi, and the slaveholder with his grandmother and his mom left him very, very fair-skinned.
Right.
And so my grandmother told me one time that Dr. Westbrook was sitting in a meeting and the Grand Wizard said, "We hear that the N-word is going to try to infiltrate our organization. But I don't care how blue the eyes, how blonde the hair, I can tell an N-word anywhere.
Right.
We catch him, we're going to castrate him and hang him up for public display."
Right.
And Dr. Westbrook was sitting there looking at the man, he was in the audience looking at him when he said that, and they never found out that he infiltrated.
Wow. Unbelievable. I got a guy on my channel. I did the video. If you get a chance, look at it. He got caught. Him and 3 other black guys went to the KKK rally and got caught. And he lived to tell it. So I've heard of them stories. As we go to Denver, Black people got to Denver in various ways. As you said, in your family, they went with the people that, I guess they weren't slaves at the time, but the people they worked for.
Yeah, so you're talking about 1903.
1903, yeah, that's no slaves. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
So they came, I can't say they came in a car, they may have come in a wagon. That's about the time that automobile transportation was just getting up and running, so they
right.
in a wagon. But they came in 1903, and my great-great-grandfather, Frank Davis McPherson, was on the first board of trustees with Scotch United Methodist Church here in Denver.
Okay.
In 1904.
Okay.
And so Grand Ann and Grandpa Frank had Grand Kell, my great-grandmother, Callie Cromwell, and Grand Kell had Anna McPherson. That's my grandmother. We called her Goldie.
Okay.
And she married William J. McLuster. So Goldie and William J. McLuster had 10 children.
Okay.
And the youngest passed away within a year of one another. The oldest
man,
drowned in 1944, about 3 weeks before his 16th birthday. And then the youngest, Louise, passed away just a few hours old.
Okay.
They raised the other children, who were Frank Davis McLuster, who was named for my great grandfather, and then Lenora, Harriet, Aline, Joseph, and Joseph, Uncle Joe, is named Joseph Westbrook McLuster for Dr. Westbrook, who delivered him, and Anna, my mother, and Clarence Robert, and
Right.
Rosemary. And Rosemary was married to the first Black lieutenant governor here in Colorado, George Leslie Brown.
I know they had one.
Yes, he was the first Black lieutenant governor since Reconstruction, and was elected in 1974. And because we're an hour ahead of California, California elected a Black lieutenant governor in the same election, and Uncle George beat him by 1 hour.
Wow, unbelievable.
Uncle George was also a state senator, and he was a journalist and an incredible man talking about the stuff that went on in our community.
Okay, let me stop you there. How does this make you feel knowing you got such a rich history in your family? Does that put pressure on you to succeed, may I ask?
So I stand on very broad shoulders.
Yes.
And I am humbled to honor my ancestors.
Yes.
And that's why I do so much. I want to celebrate the Black American West Museum.
Yes.
So that was given to me by God to do that work.
Right. Love it.
Spiritual journey for me.
I love it. Now, when we talk about Black history in Denver, why did Black people go to Denver? I mean, was there something out there other than the new way that you can imagine? I mean, slavery hadn't extended that far. Slavery was over. Why Denver?
Okay, let's go back into slavery and the Civil War.
All right.
So President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation September of 1862, and it went into effect January 1st, 1863.
Right.
And freed people in the states that were trying to secede from the Union.
Right.
It didn't apply to for about 4 states.
Right.
At the time. And as you pass through them, we have Juneteenth, June 19, 1865.
Right.
And so some of the people that were enslaved in the South started leaving the South, moving north to some of the industrial areas. There was a lot of talk about gold. California became a free state in 1850. Texas, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, California, and part of Colorado were part of Mexico. And the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, the United States bought this land for about $15 million. And that part of that precipitated the Civil War because people wanted to continue slavery into the West. And there was a lot of issues about whether or not to continue. At the same time, people were moving west because of the territories. There were not any slave laws in the territories at the time, but there were a lot of discussions about whether a state would become a free state or a slave state. So a lot of folks moved west, some of them going to California because of gold and for a variety of reasons traveling to the west. In Colorado, in 1858, 2 men from Georgia found gold at the confluence of Cherry Creek and Platte River. So that enticed folks to come to Colorado.
Okay.
But you also have to look at this is not a simple story that's really complex and very layered. And we also need to talk about the indigenous people when we talk about our history. We need to talk about the Chinese that came in to help build the railroads as well. We need to talk about people of Mexican ancestry when we talk about all this history here in the Western United States. There's such a vast array of stories that we need to talk about. So we are not an isolated incident. We are not, it's not when we talk about Black history, I don't want to call it Black history. I want to call it history from a Black perspective.
Okay, I love it.
We tell our stories from our own experiences, but we need to recognize all of the other stories that are part of that. For example, Denver sits on the Arapaho Cheyenne land. This was their winter station.
That's
And
the Indians, the Arapaho Indians.
Arapaho and Cheyenne, indigenous people in this area, and the Ute were just west of us as well. And then you look at all of the indigenous nations that were impacted out in this area. For example, in 1864, about 8 years after Denver was founded, and we had applied for statehood in 1864, and Congress denied us statehood. They said our population wasn't large enough. But 1864 is an incredible year because the governor authorized Colonel Shivington to go out east, and Colonel Shivington, who was a Methodist minister, and several troops, none of them were Black, and some of them said no, went out and massacred about 160 Arapaho and Cheyenne people that had a white flag up, and that they were trying to work with the government agency.
Okay.
And in the same year, there were 138 men that signed a petition demanding the right to vote become part of Colorado's Constitution. And included in that were several Black men from our community, including the ministers of Zion Baptist Church, which is our oldest Black church in Denver, and Shorter AME Church, which is the other oldest Black church in Denver, in Colorado.
Okay.
And members of those congregations signed the petition. Barney Ford signed the petition, and several other men that were part of our history here demanding the right to vote. And to make that clear, the 13th Amendment was passed by Congress, and President Lincoln signed the 13th Amendment February 1865, and then it was ratified by 3/4 of the state by December 1865. So we have these brothers and these men here that had the wherewithal to go after our freedom to vote, our right to vote in Colorado, before the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were placed.
Oh man, I love it. So
there's a lot of stuff that happened in Colorado. A lot of stuff.
Really? Yeah, and I never, you don't think of, Colorados and stuff like that. Now, going to the Indians, they wanted all the Indians in Oklahoma.
No, that's the Cheyenne and Arapaho were west of there. The people that were sent off to Oklahoma were from the south. So you're talking about
I got you.
Some of the indigenous nations that were in Georgia and places like that, as they were taking their land from them.
Right.
The Cherokee.
Right.
The Creek, and several other nations, and that was called the Trail of Tears.
That's right.
From Georgia.
Right.
And marched through the Western Territories up near the Missouri River and down into Oklahoma. And there were African Americans part of that too that had to march along. And there were thousands of people that died along the way.
Yeah.
In the midst of the Trail of Tears of marching people out of their land, it was also a process of genocide in the midst of that.
Yeah. Now, so Denver played a role. Was it a safe haven for Black people back in those days, or did the slaves, to migrate out there because it was a free land, or was there skirmishes between those who wanted slavery and those who didn't? What's kind of that dynamic?
Okay, so back in the 1850s and 60s, we had Black folks coming out here for different reasons. For example, Barney Ford dressed up as a woman and escaped slavery off of the Mississippi River and went to Nicaragua for a while, and then came back to the United States and came to Denver and opened the Interocean Hotel. And he was a civil rights activist. He ran for office, but it wasn't successful. But we had a couple of folks that were in our government too, like Joseph Stewart was one of our first Black, I think, state senators in the 1890s. So, but what we need to understand is that when slavery ended, we have a 12-year period called Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. And so there were Black folks packing up, leaving, and scattering around the country. A majority of them left, the majority that left the South moved north into New York and then you have this wave called the Great Migration from World War I to World War II, where there were a couple of million Black folks that packed up and moved into the industrial areas of like Detroit,
right,
and some of the other areas, and that spawned the Harlem Renaissance era
right,
time.
right.
But you also had, during Reconstruction, you had people that were trying to gain a foothold on their own lives. There were government agencies in place to help us get land, build our schools and our churches, and establish our lives for about 12 years. But you started seeing legislation and things, especially in the South, to end that.
Right.
And there was a compromise in 1877 with the presidential election,
right,
and ended slavery, or ended Reconstruction the day he took office.
Right.
Now, the violence had started increasing at a rapid rate that continued. We had incredible amount of violence, lynchings, and brutality scattered throughout the South, and that really revved up people to start leaving. So after Reconstruction, you see this big wave of folks leave the South. Benjamin Pap Singleton encouraged 30 to 40,000 Black folks to pack up and leave the South. And Ida B. Wells, later Ida B. Wells Barnett, wrote about lynchings and stuff in Tennessee, and she encouraged another 7 to 8,000 people to pack up and leave. So when they left the South, they found places in the West to create their own community.
Okay.
Let me back up one more thing too.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Quindaro, Kansas. It's on the
I
west side.
got a guy on my channel from Quindaro. Yeah.
So Quindaro, Kansas is a really important part of this discussion because it was an underground railroad station.
Yes.
So when people, for example, in Missouri and some of those states on the other side of the Mississippi, the Missouri River, were escaping slavery, they went to Quindaro, Kansas.
That's right.
Slavery. So it was a safe haven for folks then. And then during Reconstruction, they continued to welcome folks in that were trying to figure out what to do as Reconstruction ended and as they were trying to create their own spaces. So Kansas, Quindaro, Kansas, and then you find Black settlements all around, including Black folks in Topeka, Kansas, and other places.
That's right.
One of the oldest Black settlements is Nicodemus, Kansas.
Mm.
And you can go out there and they have they still have buildings and structures and tours and things like that in Nicodemus.
Oh,
but you have lots of Black settlements all over. Some of the largest in Oklahoma, they had a ton of Black settlements.
Yes, right.
You heard of the Greenwood neighborhood in Tulsa,
right,
that bombed in 1921, May
That's
31st, right. And they burned down 30 square blocks.
Right.
Then you have so Black settlements, including Nicodemus, Kansas, Mount Bayou, Mississippi, Bogley, Oklahoma, Blackdom, New Mexico. Here in Colorado, we had Deerfield, Colorado was one of the largest of more than 25 Black settlements in Colorado.
What's the name of it?
Deerfield, D-E-A.
Deerfield, okay.
Even though we had a lot of deer in the neighborhood, they said the fields are dear to us. That's what Dr. Westbrook said. The fields are dear to us, and that's where the name Deerfield came from.
Okay.
6 miles east of a town called Greeley, Colorado. And University of Northern Colorado is there, and some of the professors at UNC have their students help the museum with the process of preservation and restoration and understanding and gathering and collecting the history of Deerfield.
Let me ask you this now. After Reconstruction, does Denver get a lot of Jim Crow stuff? Is Jim Crow, the racist thing starts really spurring up in Denver and in Colorado?
All over the place. So people assume that Jim Crow is specifically to the South. Right. But you know, talking to my grandparents and my parents about their experiences growing up in Denver, so a lot of the rules about that were not necessarily in place during the 19th century, but 1893, Plessy versus Ferguson, that encouraged some changes. When you get to the 1900s, we had a big influx of folks in Denver because of the railroads. So we have a lot of Pullman porters because of the sleeping cars on the trains.
Okay.
A big influx of Black families into the neighborhood. So all of a sudden you start seeing rules about where we could live. And so the Five Points neighborhood of Denver, and Five Points got its name because there are, the way Denver was founded, it grew northeast.
Okay.
And Capitol Hill was later built and it grew north. And the way the neighborhoods collide, it creates weird corners in some spots.
Okay.
There was a trolley that rode down Welton Street from downtown into this neighborhood, which was started in the 1870s. And one of the corners, 26th Avenue and Washington Street, which is on the northeast west south grid.
Okay.
7th Street and Welton Street, which is on that northeast trajectory, creates 5 corners. The trolley stopped there, and instead of calling the names of all the streets on its marquee, it called it 5 Points.
I got you. Is that the Black neighborhood in Denver?
That is being gentrified, but that's
Yes.
it's always been a multi-ethnic neighborhood, and at its peak, it was about 50% Black.
Okay.
And along the Welton Street corridor in particular, there were other areas in the neighborhood, but along the Welton Street corridor in particular, we have this incredible history with jazz. So we were called Harlem of the West.
Really?
So as you walk along the Welton Street corridor, we had a number of jazz clubs and restaurants and a lot of other businesses, whether it was a clothing store. We had Leroy Smith's Rhythm Records and Sporting Goods.
Yes.
All of these different businesses along the Welton Street corridor. George Morrison was a classically trained concert violinist and had the Casino Cabaret.
Yes.
And Mr. Morrison actually traveled around with his band, the RKO circuit on vaudeville and
Yes.
the circuit, and knew all these folks all over the country. My grandmother and great aunt were professional dancers.
Okay.
The RKO circuit in vaudeville when they were starting
Yes.
teenagers. And Mr. Morrison introduced them to Bilbo Jangles Robinson.
Really?
But and my grandmother talked about all these folks. She danced with Cap Calloway.
Really?
And George Morrison knew all of these performers and artists. We had the Rossonian, so some of them could stay at the Rossonian, but a lot of the musicians stayed with Mr. Morrison in his home.
Oh.
Mr. Morrison in their home, because they were not allowed to stay in the hotels downtown. They'd come in and they might perform downtown, and then they'd come up to the northeast area, the Five Points, and perform
Let me
there.
ask you this: was there a incident of a riot in Denver?
Well, I know we had a big issue with Washington Park because somebody put their foot in the water, and then we've had a lot of other incidents go on with segregation and racial issues because of some of the stuff we did. For example, one of the things that happened was, well, we had a lot of civil rights actions back in the 60s as well.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had quite a bit going on back then, and people are surprised. We had a Black Panther organization here in Denver.
Oh.
They were about uplifting our community, and there were a lot of people not happy with having them here, you know, because and you know that nationally that there were a lot of places that were doing everything they could to undermine the Black Panther organization when their issue was about uplifting our community, and their issues were.
Did Dr. King ever make it to Denver? Did he march or something like that?
Yeah, Dr. King's been out here several times. I have a picture on one of my PowerPoint presentations with Uncle George Leslie Brown, Martin Luther King, and Wyatt T. Walker. And then we have pictures. So one day you're gonna have to come out here because
yeah, I'm doing it.
This amazing library called the Blair Caldwell African American Research Library.
Yes.
5 national research libraries in the country. And connected with them, our Denver Public Library system has this digital imagery
Yes.
site, so digital images, and you can get on there and you can see these pictures of Dr. King at Macedonia Baptist Church and at other churches in our community, and you can talk to all of these people that are that have these wonderful memories of meeting Dr. King back in the 60s.
Yes. I love
He
it.
was out here several times and part of our community. We also had civil rights activists throughout time. Marcus Garvey was out here in the 1920s.
Oh, okay.
1924, because we had an organization that was working on civil rights actions back then. So Marcus Garvey out here to hang out with those folks and uplift them as well. So we've been on the radar for a long time with different civil rights activists and human rights activists.
I might be asking the same kind of question, but was there ever an incident like a sit-in at a drugstore that made national attention, or something that helped desegregate the schools, anything like that in Denver?
Well, we didn't have any sit-ins, but we had activists working on different things.
Okay.
So, for example, in our Denver school board, the first Black woman, Rachel B. Knoll, first Black woman on our Denver school board, filed a Knoll resolution in 1968 to integrate Denver public schools based on the lawsuit Brown versus Board of Education.
Okay.
Before. And she met with a tremendous amount of resistance to that. We had
from who? Not the Black people, from the white people.
Oh no, our kids, what she did, we set up a voluntary busing program, and so our kids, including my 2 sisters, went to Montclair Elementary School. One sister was going to 5th grade, and the other was going to 2nd grade. My mother left me at Harrington because I was going to 6th grade, so I could finish out there. And then a lot of kids in our neighborhood, a lot of their classmates were on those buses going to Montclair Elementary School. And then we went to Merrill. I went to Merrill Junior High School in 7th and 8th grade, and then we moved, so I went to Smiley in 9th grade. But there was a lot of voluntary busing going on with our kids going out into the other school system, other schools in the community.
I got you.
Keyes, Keyes versus Denver Public Schools lawsuit was filed in 1971. The lead family was the Keyes, and they're they have amazing history of the Keyes family in our community.
Let me ask you this. Now, you see your sisters got busted one of the schools. Did they ever say that they were ever called a nigger or something like that? Was it ever that vicious in Denver?
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, I don't know if they had those experiences in Montclair, but I sure did have it at Merrill Junior High School.
Oh, you had it?
Well, when I was in 7th grade, Students for a Democratic Society would stand on the corner with their bullhorn talking about us being in their school.
Is that a white school? That's a white organization.
Well, Merrill Junior High School was in South Denver.
Okay.
One morning, I'm sitting in my math class and on the lower level of the school and look out the window, and all these white parents pulled up in front of the school and their kids walked out on us to protest us there.
Oh my God.
There were several incidents. I had a math teacher in another semester, and I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah.
Because I met his daughter, and I don't want to.
Yeah. I got you.
He was picking on Belinda McGee. Belinda would raise her hand to ask questions. And
she's black.
Yeah, she was black, and he was insulted that she would have the nerve to ask any questions. So she would raise her hand to ask questions, and finally, he told her he had enough of her and get out of his classroom. But then, about a month later, Brenda who was a white girl in the class, raised her hand to ask questions, and he told her to get out of his classroom. So Brenda said, "Oh, I get it. I thought you just hated all the black kids in this
Right.
room. But it turns out you hate all of us, don't you?" And he said, "That's right. I hate each and every one of you. If I had it my way, I wouldn't have any of you in my class." That was that teacher.
Oh my God.
The dean at the school seemed to have an issue with the black girls.
Yeah.
Several teachers in the building that seemed to want to do the very best for our students. So
Yes.
it wasn't a blanket issue. We had individuals
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
that
Sure.
were horrific to us.
Sure.
Individual kids that were horrific to us.
Yes.
A lot of white kids that reached out with olive branches, that reached out to us to welcome us into their lives. So it's not either or. You had this range of things happening.
I got you. Let me ask you
One of
this.
my
Now,
favorite
at the museum that you're at, what's there?
The Black American West Museum and Heritage Center is in the former home of Dr. Justina Ford, the first black woman licensed doctor in Colorado.
Okay.
And Dr. Ford and her husband, Reverend John Ford, he was called to minister at Zion Baptist Church. That's how they got to Colorado.
Okay.
And so Dr. Ford applied for her medical license in Colorado in 1902. She was granted her license, but denied membership to the Colorado Medical Society. And the membership was required to practice in the hospital, so she set up practice in her home. Dr. Ford attended the delivery of more than 7,000 babies during her 50-year career, more than 37 different nationalities, knew in the range of 8 to 11 languages and dialects. And not only did she help those babies come into the world, but she also took care of their families. So she was reportedly, we hear that she says she delivered on average one baby every 3 days for 50 years. But her office was always open helping families, and she was in the cab company, helped her get around the neighborhood to go deliver the babies. So she was delivering these babies in their homes. And a lot of these families couldn't afford to pay Dr. Ford, and sometimes she was out buying groceries and coal and everything else to take care of these families, or they might bring her something from their garden.
Oh, I love it.
Plan. Dr. Ford was the most incredible physician trying to make sure that this community, whoever you were,
right,
taken care of. And you heard me say 37 different nationalities.
Yes.
She is the reason that we have this museum. And Paul Stewart founded the museum in 1971. Mr. Stewart grew up in Clinton, Iowa. And Mr. Stewart was, as a little boy, playing cowboys and Indians, sometimes wanted to play the cowboy. And his friends would tell him, there's no such thing as black cowboys. 1962, Mr. Stewart came out here to Colorado to visit his cousin, Earl Mann, who was a 5-term state legislator.
Okay.
And they were walking in downtown Denver, and he met a black cowboy. And that really inspired him. So he moved back to Denver and opened a barbershop on East 34th Avenue and Elizabeth Street and started talking to his patrons about their family history.
Right.
And Mr. Stewart learned about black cowboys and had all these wonderful pictures and artifacts and started the museum in 1971 at Clayton College, then moved to the basement of KDKO. That was our black radio station owned by Dr. Daddio.
Okay.
James Dr. Daddio. He was there about 15 years. Then Dr. Ford's former home was slated to be torn down. So he and Hiawatha Davis, our city councilman, were contacted by the neighbors. They were able to raise funds to have the house moved from its site at 2335 Arapahoe Street, loaded it on a truck, drove it down Stout Street to its present site at 3091 California Street.
Okay, I love it.
Moved the museum there in 1988. So the house was moved before he moved the museum in 88. And we've been there ever since.
Yeah, I love it. Now, and so some of the exhibits are of what? Yeah, give me a short version of what you'll see when you come to the museum.
Dr. Ford, we have an office setting for Dr. Ford. We have the 5 Points room, which showcases the 5 Points neighborhood.
Yeah.
On the second floor, we have Black settlement highlighting Deerfield, ranchers and farmers. Upstairs, the Black cowboys and Black military, including the Buffalo Soldiers and Tuskegee Airmen. And then we have a rodeo, Black rodeo, in one of the rooms upstairs as well.
I love it. What's the now? Give us the name of the museum and the website again, please.
The Black American West Museum and Heritage Center.
Right.
3091 California Street, Denver 80205. 720-242-742.
Ooh, she good.
www.bawmhc.org.
Oh my God, she's good. Okay, everybody, we're gonna put that in the description, the website and everything. Is there a Black History a festival or something like that in Denver for whatever reason that people can come to, or does the museum do a festival of some sort?
So in our 5 Points neighborhood, we have the Jazz and 5 Points in May.
Okay.
June, we have the Juneteenth Festival.
Okay, I love it.
July, we have the Colorado Black Arts Festival.
I love it.
Dr. Quintard Taylor, I want to give that as a homework assignment. He has a website called Blackcast.
We're going to put that in the description too.
Ast.org. Yep. That's homework for everybody to look at twice a week for the rest of your lives.
Right.
He's from University of Washington.
Okay.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of people that I must honor because of their work to uplift our community and to change, to make our lives better. So I just want to thank you.
Hey, everybody, this is what I do on Strong Inspirations. And let me tell you something. Hey, and she might not have known that, but when she was telling her about her family, and I'm talking about the guest on the show, I kind of teared up. It moved me like that. Come on, people, subscribe to the channel, like this video. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations, because we give it to you straight, no chaser. Straight up at you. I got the people that tell the stories. To you, my sister, I say with all sincerity, I thank you for being on the channel for sure and sharing your story about your family. And let me know, and the people who watch this know about the beauty that's in your family, the smarts that's in your family, the wherewithal. And I say to you also, please, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, stay with that museum, stay on your mission, on your calling of what you're doing and educating people and honoring the people who've come before you to make you who you are. I thank you so very much again. I want to say that with all sincerity once again. And so I just say right now, bye-bye, we out.